Neil had lived in the house for 22 years and never once opened the basement door. Not because he was afraid, but because his mother had nailed it shut when he was 3, and told him the wood down there was rotten, and he had believed her the way children believe things that are said with enough force, which is to say completely and without question. The night she died, the nail fell out on its own. He found it on the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning, a rusted thing curled like a dead finger, and he picked it up and held it to the light and thought about how rust looks exactly like dried blood if you squint hard enough. And then he put it in his pocket and went back to bed, because grief makes people do useless things with tremendous focus. 3 days after the funeral, he noticed the door was open. Not wide open, cracked, the way a mouth parts when someone is about to say something they've been holding for a long time. That crack, air that smelled like wet stone, and something older than wet stone. Something he did not have a word for, but his body recognized, the way a dog recognizes thunder before it arrives. He should have closed it. He should have hammered a new nail in and painted over the whole thing, and sold the house and moved to a city where basements did not exist. But Neil was 25 and broke, and his mother was dead, and the only thing he owned in the world was this house with its sagging porch and yellow kitchen and a basement door that had decided, after 2 decades of silence, to speak. So he opened it. The stairs were concrete, 12 of them, and they went down at an angle that felt wrong, not steep exactly, but tilted, as if the house had shifted in its sleep, and the basement had slid a few degrees to the left without telling anyone. And at the bottom there was a room. He had expected mold and boxes and maybe a dead rat or two, the usual archaeology of neglect, but instead the room was empty, except for one thing: a second door. It stood against the far wall, and it was not a door that belonged in a basement in a small town in Ohio. It was tall, almost 9 feet, made of dark wood, with grain patterns that moved when he looked at them too long, like rivers seen from an airplane. And it had no handle, no knob, no keyhole, just smooth wood from top to bottom, with a faint hum coming from behind it, that he felt more in his teeth than his ears. He touched it. The wood was warm, not room temperature warm, but alive warm, the warmth of a wrist, of a pulse point, and when his fingers made contact, the hum shifted, climbed half a note, like a voice adjusting pitch, and Neil pulled his hand back so fast he almost fell. He stood there for what might have been a minute, or might have been an hour. Time had gone strange down here, thick and slow like honey poured from a jar. And then he did what any reasonable person would do. He went upstairs, locked the basement door with a chair, drank 3 beers, and called his best friend Priya at 4 in the morning. "There is a door in my basement," he said. "You woke me up to tell me about architecture," she said, and her voice was the voice of someone who had been deeply and happily asleep, and was now deeply and unhappily awake. "Not a normal door, a wrong door. It hums, Priya, and the wood is warm." The line went quiet for a long time. "I am coming over," she said, and the way she said it, flat and fast, told him she believed him, which scared him more than the door itself, because Priya did not believe in anything she could not measure with a ruler or prove with math, and if she was taking this seriously, then something was very, very off. She arrived in 20 minutes, still wearing pajama pants with little rockets on them, her hair a black storm around her face, carrying a flashlight and a hammer and a bag of chips, because, as she put it, "If we are going to die in a basement, I am not doing it hungry." They stood at the top of the stairs together and looked down into the dark. "You first," she said. "It is my house," he said. "Exactly. Your house, your demon door, your problem. I am emotional support only." He went first. The stairs felt different this time, colder, longer, as if the basement had stretched while he was gone. And when they reached the bottom, and Priya's flashlight hit the far wall, she made a sound in the back of her throat that was not a word, but contained more information than most sentences. The door had changed. Where before it had been shut and smooth and humming, now it was cracked open. The same narrow crack the basement door had shown him, that mouth about to speak gap. And through the crack came light. Not electric light and not sunlight, but something in between, golden and shifting and alive in a way that light should not. "Neil," Priya said, and her voice had dropped to a whisper that sounded like it was coming from somewhere far away, even though she was standing right next to him. "I see it," he said. "What is behind it?" "I do not know." "Are you going to open it?" He looked at her. Priya with her rocket pajamas and her hammer and her chips. Priya who had known him since they were 6 and had held his hand at his mother's funeral, and had never once in 19 years looked at him the way she was looking at him now, which was with something that lived in the territory between fear and wonder. "Yes," he said, and he pushed the door open. The light swallowed them both whole. The first thing Neil noticed on the other side was gravity, or rather the absence of it for about half a second, a floating feeling in his stomach like the peak of a roller coaster, and then his feet hit ground and the world came rushing back in a flood of color and sound and air that tasted like rain even though no rain was falling. They were standing in a field. Not an Ohio field. Ohio fields were flat and brown and predictable. This was something else entirely. A vast stretch of silver grass that moved in waves like an ocean had decided to pretend to be land. And the sky above was the wrong color. Not blue, but a deep amber that made everything beneath it look like it was living inside a photograph taken during the last 10 minutes of sunset. "Priya," Neil said. She was not next to him. He spun around. The door was still there, standing in the middle of the field with nothing attached to it, just a tall, dark rectangle of wood with its back exposed. And through the crack he could see his basement, the concrete floor, the flashlight Priya had dropped, but Priya herself was gone. His chest went tight. "Priya!" he yelled, and his voice carried across the silver grass in a way that voices do not normally carry, as if the air here was thinner or denser or made of some material that loved sound and wanted to keep it alive as long as possible. No answer. He turned back to the field and saw, about 200 yards away, a structure. Not a building exactly, more like a tower made of the same dark wood as the door, spiraling upward into the amber sky like a vine that had forgotten how to stop growing. And at its base, something moved. He walked toward it, because there was nothing else to walk toward. The grass parted around his legs like water, and it made a sound when it moved, a whisper that was almost words, but not quite, like a radio caught between 2 stations, pulling fragments of both. Every step, the tower grew larger and stranger, its surface carved with patterns that reminded him of the door's grain, those moving rivers, except here they were enormous, each line as wide as his arm and glowing faintly from within. He reached the base in what felt like minutes, but his legs said was much longer. They ached the way they ached after a long run. And up close, the tower was even more impossible, curving inward and outward at angles that hurt to look at directly, as if the architect had known rules of geometry that did not exist where Neil came from. There was a woman sitting at the base. She was old, not grandmother old, but ancient old, the kind of old that makes age itself seem like a young concept. And she sat cross-legged on the silver grass, with her eyes closed and her hands resting on her knees, and she was humming, the same note as the door. "Excuse me," Neil said, and the woman opened one eye, just one, and looked at him the way a cat looks at a bird it has already decided not to chase. "You came through the Hakon door," she said, not a question. "I do not know what that means. It means you are either very brave or very stupid, and in my experience those two things are the same animal wearing different hats." She opened her other eye, and he saw that her irises were gold, Not brown that looks gold in sunlight, but actually gold, metallic and reflective. And when she blinked, he caught his own face in them, small and frightened, and very far from home. "My friend was with me," he said. "She came through the door too, but she is not here. Where is she?" The woman tilted her head the way birds do. The Hakan does not take two to the same place. It reads what each person needs, and sends them where that need is loudest. Your friend is somewhere in this world, answering a question she did not know she had. That is not helpful. Helpful is not my job. I am a keeper, not a guide. I sit at the base of this tower, and I hum, because the tower needs humming. And I answer questions when someone stumbles through a door they should not have opened, which happens more often than you would think. Neil felt a flash of heat behind his ribs. Not fear anymore, but frustration. The kind that turns into anger if you let it cook long enough. And he held on to it, because anger was useful. Anger was a rope you could pull yourself along when everything else had gone liquid and strange. "How do I find her?" he asked. "You climb," the woman said, and she pointed one long finger at the tower above them. "The tower shows you what the world is doing. From the top, you can see every corner of this place, every field and forest and ruin. If your friend is here, you will see her from there." He looked up. The tower disappeared into the amber sky, its top invisible, its height absurd. "How tall is it?" "As tall as it needs to be." "Very annoying," Neil said. "I have been told," she said, and something that might have been a smile crossed her face like a cloud crossing the sun. There and gone. He stepped through the entrance at the tower's base. No door here, just an archway carved with more of those glowing river patterns. And inside was a spiral staircase made of the same dark wood, each step worn smooth by what must have been thousands of feet over thousands of years. He started climbing. The stairs turned and turned and turned, and with each rotation a window appeared in the wall. Not glass, but open air, rectangular gaps that looked out onto the world below. And through the first window he saw the silver field stretching out in every direction, endless as a sea. Through the second he saw something new, a forest of white trees with leaves that were black, ink black, and they moved even though no wind was blowing, shivering like animals in their sleep. Saw a city. It sat on the edge of a lake that reflected the amber sky like a mirror, and its buildings were made of stone that glowed the same faint gold as the tower's carvings, and people moved through its streets, small from this height, ant-sized, but alive and real and walking with purpose. Through the fourth window he saw Priya. She was standing at the edge of the white forest, looking up at the black leaves with her hands on her hips and her head tilted back. And even from this impossible distance, he could see the expression on her face. Not fear, not wonder, but the look she got when she was solving a math problem in her head. That intense, concentrated stillness that meant her brain was running faster than her body could keep up with. "Priya!" he yelled through the window, but the sound went nowhere, absorbed by the tower walls, as if the wood was hungry for it. He kept climbing. There had to be a way down to her, a way out, a way through. The stairs kept turning, and the windows kept showing him pieces of this world, like cards being dealt from a deck he did not understand. And somewhere below, the old woman hummed her single note, and the tower hummed with her, and Neil climbed towards something he could not name, but could feel pulling at him like a hand wrapped around his wrist, dragging him upward into the amber and the gold and the unknown. Priya had not panicked when she fell through. She wanted to make that clear, even if only to herself. She had simply experienced a brief and understandable moment of extreme concern for her personal safety, which she expressed by screaming at a pitch that could have shattered a wine glass, and grabbing at the air like it might hold her up if she squeezed hard enough. Then her feet hit dirt, and the screaming stopped, and she was somewhere else. Not the basement. Not Neil's house. Not Ohio. Somewhere that smelled like cold sap and wet bark and something metallic underneath, like pennies left in the rain. And when she opened her eyes, she saw trees. White trees. They rose around her like the bones of enormous animals, pale and smooth and branchless for the first 30 feet, and then exploding into canopies of black leaves that blocked out the amber sky above in thick patches, letting golden light fall through in shafts that looked solid enough to grab. Turned in a full circle. Trees in every direction. No path, no door, no Neil. Neil? She called. The forest ate her voice. Not echoed it, not absorbed it, but ate it, chewed it up, swallowed it down, and gave back silence so complete it had weight. Her hands were shaking. She noticed this the way she noticed data points, clinically, at a distance, and she shoved them into the pockets of her rocket pajama pants, and felt the bag of chips crinkle against her fingers, and for some reason, this almost broke her. This stupid sound of a chip bag in a forest that should not exist, and she squeezed the bag until the crinkles stopped, and breathed until her lungs remembered their job. She was a physics major. She had published a paper at 21 on quantum decoherence. She had once debugged a 60,000-line simulation at 3 in the morning, fueled by nothing but spite and instant noodles. She could handle a forest. The trees were the wrong color. Bark. Black leaves. But they were still trees, and trees meant biology, and biology meant rules, and rules meant she could figure this out if she stayed calm and observed and did not think too hard about the fact that 10 minutes ago she had been in a basement in Ohio eating barbecue chips. She started walking, not in any particular direction, just forward, because forward was a decision, and decisions were better than standing still. The forest floor was soft, covered in fallen black leaves that crunched under her feet with a sound like crumpling paper. And between the trees she began to notice things, small things, the kind of things her brain grabbed onto the way a drowning person grabs onto floating wood. The bark of the trees was not just white. Up close it had veins of pale blue running through it, faint as the veins in her wrist, and when she pressed her palm against one of them, she felt a pulse. A pulse, slow and steady and unmistakable. The tree had a heartbeat. She pulled her hand back and stared at her palm as if it had betrayed her. Skin on skin had been fine. Skin on living wood was something her education had not prepared her for. And then she pressed her hand against the tree again, because she was a scientist, and scientists touch things twice. Still pulsing. She moved to another tree. Same thing. And another. Same thing. Every tree in this forest was alive in a way that went beyond roots and photosynthesis, and into territory that made her want to sit down on the leafy ground and stare at nothing for a while. Instead, she ate a chip. Standing in an impossible forest, hands still warm from tree pulse, she reached into her pocket and ate a single barbecue chip, with the careful focus of a woman who was holding herself together with routine and salt. She kept walking. 20 minutes in, or what felt like 20 minutes. Though time here had the same slippery quality it gets in dreams, heard something that was not silence and was not the crunch of her own feet. Music. Thin and high and far away, like someone playing a flute made of glass, and it came from her left, weaving between the white trunks in threads she could almost see. There was something at the edge of her vision, a shimmer in the air where the notes passed, as if sound here had a physical body, a color, a shape, that dissolved the moment she looked at it directly. She followed it, because music meant a player, and a player meant a person, and a person meant answers. And the trees began to thin, and the gaps between them widened, and the black leaf canopy opened up to show more of that amber sky, which had not changed since she arrived, which made her wonder if this place had a night, or if it was always this permanent golden evening. The music led her to a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a boy. He was maybe 16, thin, dark-haired. A fallen white trunk with his legs crossed and his eyes closed, and he was playing an instrument she had never seen, something between a flute and a reed, curved like a rib bone, made of a material that caught the amber light and threw it back in fractured pieces. And the music coming out of it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard, which annoyed her, because she was not a person who used words like beautiful without evidence. And yet here she was, standing at the edge of a clearing in rocket pajamas, ambushed by beauty. He stopped playing. "You are from a Hakandor," he said without opening his eyes. His voice was young, but carried the cadence of someone who had said this sentence before, to other strangers in this same clearing. "How do you know that?" "You smell like the other side, like concrete and old coffee and something chemical. The forest notices." He opened his eyes and they were dark brown, normal, human. She had seen since falling through that basement door, and she felt a loosening in her chest that she did not examine too closely. "My name is Priya. I came through with a friend, but we got separated. I need to find him, and I need to find the door we came through, and I need to go home." The boy looked at her for a long time. "My name is Sorrow," he said. "I have lived in this forest my whole life. I have seen 11 people come through Hakan doors. 5 of them found their way back. 4 of them chose to stay. That is only 9. "Yes," he said, and the word sat between them like a stone dropped in still water, and the ripples it sent out told her everything the word itself did not. "What happened to the other 2? Sorrow stood up and tucked his instrument into a strap across his back, and looked at her with an expression that was not unkind, but was also not comforting. It was the expression of someone who had decided to be honest rather than to comfort. Gentle. "The world took them. It does that sometimes. It finds the thing inside you that you have been running from, and it puts it in front of you, and you either face it or you become part of the landscape. Another tree, another stone, another piece of the music." Priya stared at him. "That is absolutely insane." "Yes. I am a physicist. I study quantum mechanics. I have a fellowship. I do not become trees." Sorrow almost smiled. The corner of his mouth lifted a fraction, and then fell back. "The forest does not care about fellowships," he said. "Come with me. I know someone who can help you find your friend, but we need to move before the leaves turn." "Before the leaves turn what?" He looked up at the black canopy above them, and for the first time, his face showed something that was not calm patience, but something quicker, something with edges. "Hungry," he said, and he started walking fast enough that Priya had to half-jog to keep up, her chip bag crinkling in her pocket, like a countdown, and the leaves above them shivered in their windless way. And she did not look up, because she was afraid of what looking up would confirm, that the leaves were not shivering, they were leaning. Neil reached the top of the tower, and the top of the tower was not a top at all. It was a room, circular and wide, with no ceiling, just open amber sky pouring down like syrup into a bowl, and every wall was a window, floor to sky, and through those windows the entire world lay spread beneath him, like a map drawn by someone who loved the place they were mapping. He could see everything. The silver field where he had arrived, rippling in its ocean-pretending way. The white forest, vast and dark-canopied, stretching north like a scar on the land. The golden city by the lake, its streets alive with movement. And farther out, things he had no names for, a desert of blue sand, a mountain range that glowed red at its peaks, a river that split into 7 branches, and each branch was a different color, and all of it sitting, under that permanent amber sky, like the whole world, was trapped inside a jar of honey. He pressed his face to the window glass, not glass, something thinner, something that vibrated under his skin, and searched for Priya. He had seen her from lower down, at the forest's edge, but now from this height, The forest was a dark mass, and the individual shapes within it were lost to distance. She was in there somewhere, rocket pajamas and all, and he could not reach her from up here, no matter how far he leaned. "The tower shows," said a voice behind him. "It does not deliver." He turned. A man stood in the center of the room. He had not been there when Neil arrived, which meant he had either appeared from nothing, or had been standing so still that Neil's eyes had treated him as furniture. And he was tall, thin, with skin the color of the amber sky, and eyes that held the same gold as the old woman's below, metallic and reflective, and deeply, unsettlingly alive. "Who are you?" Neil asked. "I am Alton. I built this tower, or rather the tower built itself, and I agreed to stand inside it. Almost the same thing, if you squint. You built a tower that builds itself? I provided the intention. The wood provided the execution. It is a collaborative process, like most things worth making." Neil did not have time for philosophy. He had time for Priya, who was alone in a forest with hungry leaves, and for finding the door home, which was standing in a field somewhere below, looking like the world's most ominous wardrobe. "I need to get to the forest," he said. "My friend is in there, and I need to find her." Alton studied him, and being studied by those gold eyes felt like being read, not looked at, as if the man was turning pages behind Neil's face and finding chapters Neil had not written. "The Hakon doors do not separate people by accident," Alton said. "They separate people by need. You are here because the tower has something for you. Your friend is in the forest because the forest has something for her. Before the tower has finished with you, you will find nothing, not even her. What does the tower have for me?" Alton walked to the window that faced north, toward the forest, and he placed his palm against the surface, and the vibration changed, deepened, and the view through the window shifted, zoomed, as if the glass itself was bending light to bring distance close, and Neil saw the forest floor in sharp detail, the white trunks, the black leaves, the pale blue veins pulsing beneath bark. And then the view shifted again, and he was looking at a basement. Not any basement, his basement. And in the basement was the dark door, standing open, golden light pouring through it, and on the floor beside the door was a box, his mother's box. He recognized it the way you recognize a scar, not by its shape, but by the feeling it produced. A small wooden box with brass hinges that his mother had kept on her nightstand for as long as he could remember. Had disappeared the day she died. He had searched the house for it, every drawer and closet and shelf, and it was gone. And now it was sitting on his basement floor, as if it had been waiting for him to leave, so it could arrive. "What is in that box?" Alton asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. "I do not know. She never opened it in front of me. I asked once, when I was 8, and she closed her hand over it and said, 'Not yet,' and the look on her face made me never ask again." Alton nodded as if this confirmed something. "The door in your basement was not nailed shut because the wood was rotten. Your mother was a keeper, Neil, like the woman at the base of this tower. She crossed through a Hakon door when she was young, and she came back, and she sealed it behind her because she was not finished with what the door had shown her, and she was afraid you would find it before you were ready." The words landed in Neil's stomach like stones thrown into a well, heavy, sinking, sending up echoes that hit the walls on the way down. His mother, his quiet, ordinary Ohio mother, who made meatloaf on Tuesdays and hummed while she washed dishes, and died in a hospital bed with his hand in hers, had been to this place, had stood in this amber light, had known about this world and said nothing for 22 years. The anger came, and it was familiar, warm, a coat he had worn many times, anger at secrets, anger at silence, anger at being protected from things he had a right to know, and he grabbed it and held it close because it was better than the other thing rising behind it, which was grief so large it did not fit inside his body and would spill out and ruin him if he let it. "She left the box for you," Alton said. "When a keeper dies, the door opens, the nail falls, the box appears. This is how it has always worked. The knowledge passes down." what knowledge doors are, where they lead, why they exist, and why some of them must never be opened again. Neil looked out the window at the world below, all that amber and silver and gold, all that impossible beauty, and thought about his mother humming at the kitchen sink, the same single note, always the same note, and he realized with a lurch that rearranged something fundamental inside his chest, that she had not been humming a song. She had been humming the tower's frequency, the same note the old woman hummed at the base, the same note the door had made when he touched it. She had been keeping it alive, maintaining it, from a kitchen in Ohio, with wet hands and a dish towel over her shoulder. She had been holding a door between worlds in tune, like a woman tuning an instrument she could never put down. She did it for 22 years, Neil said, and his voice came out wrong, cracked in the middle like a plate dropped from a height. 25. Altan corrected. She started the day you were born. She knew that when she died, the door would open and you would come through. She spent your entire life preparing this place for you. The amber sky above the tower seemed to deepen, the gold going darker, richer, and Neil stood in the room at the top of a tower his mother had known about before he took his first breath, and felt the ground shift under him, not physically, but in every other way, the ground of who he was and where he came from and what was true. He sat down on the floor because his legs made the decision without consulting him, and the tower hummed around him, his mother's note, and he pressed his palms flat against the warm wood and felt the pulse in it, the same pulse as the white trees, as the dark door, as the house he had lived in for 22 years without knowing it was alive. He closed his eyes. He had a box to open. But first he had to find Priya. And to find Priya, he had to let the tower finish whatever it was doing to him. And to let the tower finish, he had to sit still and listen to his mother's note fill the amber air, like a song she had been singing to him his whole life, through walls he was only now learning to hear through. So he sat, and he listened. Sorrow led Priya through the white forest, at a pace that made her lungs burn, and her pajama pants swish like angry flags. And she did not complain, because the leaves above them were doing something she refused to describe as following. They were just moving, in her direction, consistently, which was a coincidence she intended to survive. "Where are we going?" she asked between breaths. "The loom," Sorrow said. "It is the oldest structure in this world, older than the tower, older than the city, older than the forest itself, and the woman who lives inside it has been here since the first Hakan door opened, which was a very long time ago by any calendar." "Does she have a name?" "Many, none of them hers. People call her what they need her to be, the weaver, the first keeper, the mother of doors. She finds all of these embarrassing." They broke through the tree line, and the forest ended, as if someone had drawn a line in the earth. "Stay behind it." And ahead was a valley, wide and shallow, and at its center sat a building that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Its walls were woven from branches of white wood. Its roof was a lattice of black leaves, held together by some force that was not gravity. And from inside it came a sound that Priya recognized in her bones before her brain caught up. The hum. The same hum as the door in Neil's basement. The same note, but fuller here, richer, layered with harmonics that made the air itself seem to thicken and shimmer. They entered through an archway made of two white trunks bent toward each other like hands meeting in prayer. And inside was a single room, vast, cathedral large, and every surface was covered with threads. Not threads, not fabric. These were threads of light, golden and silver and pale blue, stretching from wall to wall in patterns so dense and intricate that they looked like the inside of a brain mapped in color, and each thread vibrated at its own frequency, and together they produced the hum, which was not one note, but thousands of notes so perfectly aligned they sounded like one. At the center of it all sat a woman. She looked like no one and everyone. Her face shifted when Priya looked at it too long, not changing exactly, but rearranging emphasis, a cheekbone catching light differently, an eye shape sliding between shapes. As if she was not one person, but a composite, an average, a living summary of every face that had ever passed through a Hakan door. Priya, the woman said, and her voice was the hum given words. You know my name? I know every name that comes through. The doors tell me. They are not just passages, they are mouths, and they speak to me about everyone who crosses. That is extremely creepy. The woman laughed, and the threads around the room vibrated with it, colors shifting, patterns rearranging, and the laugh was warm and real and nothing like what Priya expected from someone who lived inside a building made of light and branches. Sit, the woman said, and Priya sat, because her legs were tired and her brain was full, and the chip bag in her pocket was empty, and she had been running on adrenaline and barbecue salt for what felt like several hours. I need to find my friend Neil, Priya said, and I need to find the door home, and I would like an explanation for what is happening to me, because I am a person who needs explanations the way other people need oxygen. You are a physicist, the woman said. Yes, Priya replied. Then you understand that observation changes the thing observed, that measurement is not passive, that the act of looking is also the act of creating. I understand that as quantum mechanics, not as life advice. It is both. This world exists in a state of potential until someone from your side crosses through a Hakan door. The potential into the actual. The silver fields, the white trees, the amber sky. They become real because you are here to see them, and they become specific because of who you are. Priya's brain did something it rarely did. It stopped. Not stopped working, but stopped arguing. Stopped running its constant background process of skepticism and measurement and proof. And for one bare second, she just heard what was being said, and let it exist without testing it. The forest, she said. The trees have heartbeats. Yes, because you are someone who puts her hand on things to understand them. The forest gave you something to feel. For someone else, the trees might sing, or change color, or grow fruit that tastes like memory. The world responds to the observer. And the hungry leaves, the woman's face did something complicated. That is the world responding to what you are afraid of. You are a person who is afraid of being consumed by things larger than yourself, your work, your intelligence, your need to understand. You are afraid that if you stop running the calculations will swallow you. So the forest shows you that fear as leaves that lean toward warmth. Priya wanted to argue. Every atom of her training told her to argue, but the words sat in her chest like a key turning in a lock she had not known was there. She had been running, not from anything visible, not from monsters or danger, but from the vast and terrifying possibility that the universe was stranger than her models could contain, and that she was smaller inside it than she could bear to admit, and that this smallness was not a failure, but a freedom she had never allowed herself. The threads of light around the room pulsed, and for a moment she saw them clearly, not as abstract patterns, but as connections. Lines drawn between this world and hers, between the Hakan doors and the people who crossed through them. Between Neil in his tower, and her in this woven room, and his mother humming at a kitchen sink in Ohio. All of it connected, all of it vibrating at the same fundamental frequency. And the physicist in her did not recoil from this, but leaned in with the hunger of someone who has been studying the shadow of a thing and is finally seeing the thing itself. Neil is in the tower, the woman said. He is learning what his mother left for him. When he is ready, the tower will bring him here, and when you are both here, I will show you the way home. And the door, the Hakan door, what happens to it? That depends on Neil. His mother kept it sealed for 22 years. He can seal it again, or he can keep it open. The choice belongs to the keeper, and the keeper is now him. The hum in the room shifted, a new layer added, and Priya felt it in her sternum, a warmth that radiated outward, like a hand pressed against her chest from the inside, and through the wall. Woven walls, she heard footsteps. Neil walked through the archway. He looked different. Not physically, not visibly. But something behind his eyes had rearranged, some weight redistributed. Some door inside him opened, or closed. And when he saw her, he made a sound that was half laugh, and half something else, something with water in it. And she stood up and crossed the room and grabbed him in a hug so hard his ribs protested. "You absolute disaster of a human being," she said into his shoulder. "You made me walk through a forest in pajamas. You brought chips. I ate them all. I ate them without you. I am not sorry." He laughed, real and full and shaking. And over his shoulder Priya saw the woman in the center of the room smile, with a face that flickered between 1,000 faces, and settled for just a moment on one that looked like Neil's mother. The threads pulsed gold. "It is time," the woman said, and she raised one hand. Threads rearranged themselves, opening a corridor of light that led from the center of the room to a point in the distance where Priya could see, impossibly, perfectly, the dark wood door standing in a silver field, still open, still waiting. They walked toward it together, Neil and Priya, side by side, and the corridor of light hummed around them with the note that had started everything, the note his mother had hummed, the note the tower sang, the note that held this world together like a single thread holds a button to a shirt, small and vital and invisible until you look. At the door, Neil stopped. He turned back. The amber world stretched behind them, vast and golden and alive, and he placed his hand on the dark wood one more time, and felt its warmth, its pulse, and he understood now what his mother had understood, that some doors are not meant to be sealed forever, and some doors are not meant to stay open, and the job of a keeper is not to choose one or the other, but to understand when each is needed, but to listen, to feel the hum, and know when to let the world breathe through, and when to let it rest. He stepped through. The basement was cold and gray, and smelled like concrete and old dust. The box was on the floor where the tower had shown it, small and wooden, with brass hinges, and he picked it up and held it, and did not open it. Not yet. Priya stepped through behind him, and the door closed, not slammed, not sealed, just closed, gently, the way you close a book you intend to open again. And the hum faded to silence, and the basement was just a basement, and the house was just a house, and the morning light was coming through the kitchen windows upstairs, ordinary, and yellow, and warm. He looked at Priya. She looked at him. "So," she said, "Tuesday?" He almost smiled. "Tuesday," he said, and he carried the box upstairs into the light.